Hello and welcome to the No Faith in Humanity Minisode. This Minisode is related to our first episode, David. So if you haven't listened to the first episode, I suggest that you stop this immediately and go back and listen to it. Besides the fact that I think that it's a fantastic episode and we talk about some really interesting stuff, it would be really helpful for you to understand what's going on in this Minisode. So our podcast pretty much follows the format where we take a chunk of an interview, and then we have a section where Sam and I discuss the topics that were brought up in that section. And usually those further discussions are like 30 minutes, sometimes like 45 minutes to an hour long, and we just can't include everything in an episode because it would just be hours long, and that's just like way too exhausting. Nobody's got time for that. So we decided that we would release these minisodes that are parts of our further discussion that didn't quite make it into the podcast, the episode, but we still thought were really interesting and worth sharing. So this is broken up into two sections, and just so that there's like no confusion and that they kind of don't bleed together and they're separate, we have just like a short musical interlude just to separate them. So yeah, I hope that you guys enjoy, because I know that we definitely had a blast with all these discussions and everything, and I hope you guys are able to get something out of it. I'm gonna actually take that quote and use it a little bit later on, or we can talk about it right now. Just like kind of make a brief. Because we kind of talked about the empathy that God would have, and it's like a very real. Like, even the way that he just said it, it was just like he was just like, you know, like I guess I was just upset, or I was just upset. It was just a very like,
He says it in this tone that I can imagine him sitting on a bench next to God, like on a cliff, overlooking eternity, whatever eternity is, you know, represented by in a metaphor like an ocean or something. And God asking him about the time when he walked away from his faith, never to return. I was just upset.
Yeah. Dude, I got goosebumps. I just want to say, your words gave me goosebumps. But it's true. It's true. Like, I completely agree with you. It's like, I don't know.
He talks about it as an emotional thing. Like, that's, you know, in his own words to a degree, he's like, this was a teen angst thing, and it was driven by a lot of emotion. And he does make room in the future for potentially coming back to the faith, which I think is him saying, like, yes, walking away from it was largely emotional, but there were real concrete things that I do have to work through. And I think this might just be a time has not yet healed that wound or allowed enough space in his relationship with Allah for him to want to talk to him again.
Let me ask you one question. Like, how do you feel like someone walking away from their faith? Because I know that was angry at God. He talked about being very angry at God and everything. So I think there was anger there, but I think the majority of it was just him, being upset, him being sad by what's going on. Just, you know, I just feel like, I don't know, at the core, would it make a difference to God if someone left for like one reason opposed to another reason?
Do you think God would hold or seem one
like, let's just say
worthy a reason?
Yeah, let's just say I was like, hey, I want to leave the church because I want to, I don't know, like, I don't know, I'm trying to think of something that's like not okay in the church or something. I'm leaving the church for like selfish, like I want
sex before marriage.
Yeah, or something like that. Or like I was thinking like I want to commit adultery. Like I'm in love with someone else. Like I'm married to someone, but I'm in love with someone else. So I'm just like, screw the church, screw with like, and I'm just gonna go and just live this heathen life. And like, even though the end result, as he talked about, you know, smoking weed and whatever. I mean, I guess we can argue whether these things are wrong. I personally don't think that's like wrong at all. But the idea that, like, yes, like he said, it was a result of him turning away from God. These bad things not bad things, but these, you know, kind of, you know, the way that he was treating his family, how he was gone all the time, and he was drinking a lot, and he was smoking a lot and everything, and like, it was all a consequence of him walking away from the faith. But at the core of it, the reason why he left the faith was because he was upset that these things were happening. It came from like a good heart that he loved people and he didn't want to see these people suffer, whether they were close to him or not. I don't know if that meant or if God would see that in someone if you just leave for...
He would have to. I mean, if he didn't, then what's to prevent me from talking to God on somebody else's behalf? And that's honestly a part of my faith that's like very dear to me.
Like prayer you're talking about, or...
No, and like really talking to God, like on a judgment day type stuff.
Oh, okay.
Like, you know, you imagine this God who's going to be judge of the world and is going to be sentencing people with eternal sentences.
Yeah.
That's the only kind he's going to be dishing out, are eternal ones on that day.
Yeah.
And I feel like humanity should be able to petition for itself, and I think that's what you see in Jesus. You see this ultimate petitioner. And that's what he does. That's what it says he is doing in heaven right now, offering petitions to the Father on our behalf.
Yeah.
So he is praying for me right now.
Yeah.
And so I think that, you know, on Judgment Day, me being evil, I can see that it's good.
Mm-hmm.
And because I see that, and I'm capable of saying that to you, I assume that I would have the same audacity to relay that to God if I saw that God's opinion different than mine, or he might be like things weren't going well. If I was a bystander, I would, you know, step in.
Yeah, no, that makes. Do you think that's
how I view judgment? I view judgment as something that happens with facts being presented, with God being there, with you being there, and then with
like
somebody
character witnesses or something?
Yeah, kind of.
Yeah.
But the character witness, I imagine, is Jesus. And so I imagine him being, you know, there for me. I imagine him being there for David as well. Whether or not David would expect it. I just imagine that that's how things are going to go. And, like, I don't know. My beliefs about the afterlife are also kind of whack. You know, it's just...
I know. You have very unique...
My belief is that God will treat everybody's... My belief is that everyone will find the afterlife... everyone will find that this life was adequate preparation for their experience of the next life.
How so? What do you mean, like...
I don't believe that heaven will be clouds that we float on all day with harps, because this life would not prepare me for that at all. I believe that heaven will be something that includes tables and chairs and carpeted rooms. And I'm not sure cars or roads, but I imagine that traveling will be a thing that people do to see people that they love, places that they want to go, things that they want to do, you know. And so this life makes sense as preparation for that, you know. And so I imagine somebody that wasn't coming from the Christian faith appearing in what I imagine, or what I call the Christian heaven, which is really just the human heaven. I call it Christian to show that it's not a proven fact. You know, but I imagine human heaven is something like human earth, but with
like more real,
more real. I
like
imagine,
more connected.
Yeah, more connected.
Like on shorts.
Kind of, maybe like on shorts.
Yeah.
Because I feel like, I think you consider would you call it psychedelic, a connection that you experience with somebody under the influence of something like shrooms or MDMA. Is that psychedelic, feeling like that sense of oneness and empathy, or...
I think it's psychedelic. Yeah, I would consider that psychedelic.
Consider that a psychedelic effect. It's like
yeah, I mean, they're psychedelics. Yeah, sure, yeah.
But, yeah, I imagine it would kind of be like that.
Yeah, that's interesting. And, like, so I just had this thought. What if, like, wasn't heaven supposed to be... I mean, wasn't Earth supposed to be a perfect place until Adam and Eve sinned?
Yeah. Well, Eden was paradise, at least.
Eden was paradise.
Still existed. We just weren't in it yet.
Okay, so we're assuming that the rest of the world was also perfect, right?
No, it's the wilderness. Eden is a limited garden within the world. Isn't that nuts?
Yeah. Oh, wow. Yeah, that's blowing my mind. my thought was like, what if you get to heaven and someone already sinned in that heaven? So it's almost kind of like you have to keep like
you get there and then it's like this world has already fallen. You gotta die again.
To get to the next one, and then like that one's fallen. You just like keep like that's kind of like
great. That would be like a great plot for a video game.
Yeah, just like because like at some point, think about it. It's been thousands. It took like Adam and Eve like 2 days to sin. Yeah. So like can you like thousands and thousands of years that like humans have been on this earth, or like, I mean, come on. Like, because he did say that words and logic he considers to be him.
Yeah.
And he wants that area, so he splits his brain up. It's like the area of the brain that thinks in words and logic. That's what he is, and so he doesn't want these emotions kind of like taking control, which is interesting to me.
Because he says his transition was based on an emotion.
Yeah, exactly. But it's kind of like he's deciding to like, I don't know. I feel like when you decide to be like, I'm gonna build my identity off of like logic and words, I feel like concrete things. I feel like it makes me think of the C.S. Lewis quote or whatever. That's like, sure, you can put your heart in a box and like kind of shut it off, but then if you don't let anything come in to hurt you, like even an animal, like having like a pet or whatever, so we couldn't even have paws, or like, you know, having friends or loved ones, like it's just gonna get hard and it's gonna be like,
you'll be invincible, but you'll be irredeemable.
Yeah, exactly. And like, I don't know, I feel like Dara being this really kind person, I think I don't know why, he made that choice to be like, I want to have think in words and logic and kind of dampen the emotional part of it.
I think,
or like maybe
I'm an emotional person.
Yeah.
And I think kind of what you're seeing is, I think it's similar to what you would see in somebody who had fallen out of love with somebody and had gone into, because that's the other scenario that comes to mind when you talk about somebody shutting off emotion and going to logic only. That's the classic, I was in love once and then my heart was broken and now I'm a man and I don't love anymore.
Or you think about it logically, yeah. You're like, oh, she wasn't good because of this, and this. It's like you almost have a list of things like to make yourself feel better, but
you render the previous object of affection with all these new grievances that you've established, given the space that separation had provided. You know, and I think like I know I was like, I know the weight of my emotions that I had for my exes when I was with them, and I can speak about it in a kind of disconnected way sometimes, but I know it is a very different thing when it's there, real, in you, than speaking about it from a detached place, I think. And I think that's the safety that logic and words, air quotes around that phrase, provide somebody who doesn't want to be in the jungle of emotion.
Oh yeah, it's difficult. It's definitely like nearly impossible to navigate through sometimes when you are emotional and like.
And I think words can be a crutch, you know, that we use to distance ourselves, because the word is a thing that leaves us and is almost like a separate entity once it's outside of our mouth. It's just a description of a thing that was within us. And
so you're putting a very, like, almost labeling something kind of removes its power in a way. It's like,
yeah, because it's no longer the thing itself that you're looking at. You're looking at the label.
Gotcha.
It takes the eyes off the thing itself as soon as you give it a label.
I don't know. I feel like, it's hard for me to... I think also I have to accept with doing this podcast and talking to these people. Like, I feel like I want to end each section and be able to take something from it, be able to have something concrete that I can, like, write down and, like, hold with me. Be like, okay, this is what I got out of this. Like, thinking about, like, forgiveness.
This is what I learned today, Mom.
Yeah. Exactly, yeah.
What did you learn in school today? This. Yeah. I wrote it out.
Yeah, exactly. That's, like... but I think at sometimes... there's just gonna be a part that's like I don't fully understand it, and I just need to kind of accept that. I don't fully understand where he was coming from, but I need to accept that he knows. And even like the forgiveness thing, like I don't think I'm ever gonna wrap my head around the fact that he was able to leave. And I understand like the points that were being made. I can totally understand, but for some reason it's just like I don't know. I just still can't wrap my head around like why someone that would have this comfort and peace would just end up leaving. Because it's like, I mean, it's like, yeah, it's like, I really look at it as like you have a comfortable life and then you give up your life for like a better cause, which I understand that, but it's like, I understand that in that sense, like in the Peace Corps sense or whatever, or even missionaries who leave and spend years in Africa or wherever they're doing their missions. I just feel like, yeah, like, I think what he fell into was this false dichotomy. That was the problem. Because to me, it's like, you don't need to give up that peace and do that. Like, it's not one or the other. You don't have to give up one. It's like, both can coexist. Like, you can be helping people and still be a believer, but like, it can't. That's why I'm thinking this arrogance thing, because it just came down to him just being like,
but
I know the arrogance. I know
arrogance isn't the word. It's
I know.
It's upset. Provided the word in this case. I feel like this is one. I don't know. I just felt like it had so much weight when he said it.
I know. I agree with you.
Just upset.
Yeah, I know. I totally. I'm with you on that. It's just like maybe I'm coming from a mindset of where I've been not constantly. But I think a frequent answer is just like, God's ways are higher than our ways. And it's like, I don't know, like, how can you question the God of the universe? He put the stars in the sky. Like, I don't know. And I feel like to come across and be like, well, you know, these things are messed up. I feel like a typical answer. Because I feel like nobody has like a good answer as to like, I guess the answer is like, people have free will. Like,
yeah, just going back to this idea that maybe if we had a time machine, we could counsel him somehow during this time of trial of his and say, listen, there are other ways to solve this problem that you have with suffering being in the world, and other ways that you can maintain your faith and still respect this issue and admit that it exists, but yet flourish and help others in the process. I think the thing is, even if he took that route and became somebody who was eternally indebted to the service of the public, you would reach points where, I mean, suffering's not going to end. It's always going to be there. And so try as you might, you spend your entire life on something, and like, you know, what if a 12-year-old dies in your arm because like whatever happened? Yeah, that's a day when whatever else you had done before in your life, you might get to that point where you're just too upset again, you know? It's like, God's been good to you, he's been providing, but like, fuck, man. Yeah. I really care about this. Like, I cared about this 12-year-old in particular. Yeah. Not just the 50 other ones I'd saved in the past. This one mattered just as much to me. Yeah. And why didn't this matter as much to you? Yeah. And it's a constant thing. Like, so
do you think that, like, we are just, like, or was, I don't want to say doomed, but do you think he was always kind of built to like reach this point? Like, do you think he, like, even if we went back in time and like saved that point, you think that later on these things would eventually set in and he would eventually he was kind of like
actor power is this level of empathy that would cause him such a grievance to stand up to somebody he believed creator, founder, ruler of the universe and say,
and be comfortable with it.
This is wrong.
And be I mean, he does say that he felt alone and it was a struggle, but it also seemed like he was also like
committed.
Committed. Exactly. That's a good
and the simplicity of anger and upsetness brought him to that. He said the upsetness had been welling up for a long time, I think, to use his words. And so that was something that he had obviously kind of been managing in one way or another, probing with different questions as he sorted, through this all on his own.
Definitely, yeah.
And then it gets to that point where it's too much. But I feel like the upsetness is probably the thing that really makes him why he speaks softly. It's the reason why
he's such a great person.
That
he really is. He really is.
This thing that was upsetting him was discomfort in other people. And to know that God made a human being that is so passionate about saving others from unnecessary suffering and discomfort, or has that much of a desire to, or that much of a wish that others weren't in suffering, is something that I'm very thankful to
Definitely,
offer for.
yeah.
I mean, that's absolutely worth creating. And so even though this is something that compelled him to leave God, I still feel like he could, probably someday look back on all this and maybe just breathe new life into something that he had put down. Because I think the issue really is he found out while he was Muslim that his heart was as loving toward others as it was. And then he became agnostic. But I think it's just a real issue of him finding himself, and that he really does care this much. And
Definitely.
I think he might find someday that he can care that much within the context of Islam.
Yeah. Maybe. Hopefully.
Hopefully not, in his words.
Yeah, well, hopefully. Well, we hope.
We hope. We certainly hope.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. Alright, that's going to do it for us for this first Minisode. We really appreciate you guys listening. We had a lot of fun talking about the topics that we talked about. And just, hey, buddy, stop. Sorry, that was my cat chewing on the wires. We'll be having the next full episode coming out really shortly, so be sure to be looking at your podcast feeds for that, and be checking the Facebook page. Make sure to follow us on Facebook so you don't miss anything. You can find us on Facebook at the No Faith in Humanity Podcast. You can also follow us on YouTube. It's the same, the No Faith in Humanity Podcast. And if you have a few seconds, we'd really appreciate it if you just went on to rate us, either on iTunes, Stitcher, wherever you get your podcast. That would help us a lot. So yeah, until next time, stay safe and peace be with you.